Finding the old days again. These past few days, a cold spell has arrived. As Tet approaches, the weather has become even colder, with occasional drizzles. Wearing a raincoat is uncomfortable, but not wearing one is not an option. If you happen to walk a few kilometers, tiny dust particles will cling to your clothes, and you'll want to take them off and wash them right away. I moved to the south over 5 months ago to attend university. And the weather here is scorching, much like the summer in the north. It took me a month to get used to this weather, and when I went back to the north for Tet, I had to get used to the damp and chilly weather of the winter transitioning into spring. Even though this is my homeland where I've lived for 18 years. This afternoon, the weather was freezing. After finishing my lunch, I quickly climbed into bed and snuggled under the blanket. My eyes closed, and I fell asleep without realizing it. There's a phone call for you. How can you sleep like that? The phone is ringing loudly, and you don't even know it. I jolted awake at my mother's loud call. I rarely keep my phone near my bed since it's not good to sleep with it nearby. I usually just leave it somewhere on my desk or around the room. The phone is only really important to me as an alarm clock. Occasionally, my parents or a few friends would call to ask about my class schedule, and sometimes, I would chat with my long-distance friends at night when there was nothing to do. Suddenly, someone called in the afternoon, which was strange. I got up from bed, wondering who it could be. "Who is it, Mom?" "It's Jung, call him back." I pressed the call button with reluctance, lazily yawning and stretching before answering. The voice on the other end picked up quickly, almost making me bite my tongue with surprise. Are you at home? Come hang out with me at the smoothie stand for fun." Half awake, I retorted immediately, "You monkey. Call me sis, not my. What do you mean hang out in this rainy weather? Just rest. It's not even raining hard. Just a few drops. Come on, I'm bored, and you're the only one I'm inviting to grab some drinks. It's been a while since we talked." "Oh, so you only remember me when you have no one to talk to?" I replied in a sarcastic tone. "Well, I remembered to invite you to hang out." "I only invite you," he said teasingly. "Okay, I'll listen. Wait for me, honey." I hastily changed into presentable clothes and rummaged through my bag, which I had just brought back from yesterday afternoon. After a while of searching, I found my favorite outfit. When I was almost ready to leave, I realized that I hadn't asked for the location. "Where are you sitting? You didn't tell me." "Idiot. Oh, I forgot. It's the smoothie stand near Mr. Hung's old review center. Do you remember?" "Yeah, I know. I'll be there soon." I had never been to that smoothie stand before, which I passed when I was studying for university entrance exams. The tin roof was low, and the rain could seep through the steel joints on the ceiling. The small square plastic tables were scratched with black marks, but I didn't know if it was from mold or plastic oxidation. Around each table were 5 or 6 mismatched plastic chairs of varying heights, as if they were assembled from different sets of tables and chairs. Despite its shabby appearance, the food was delicious, and the prices were reasonable, so many people came. It was called a smoothie stand because it was a small roadside stall with no name, serving smoothies, ice cream, coffee, and tea, but many people's favorite item was still the smoothie. If someone wanted to ask for directions, they could use this place as a landmark. As I arrived at the entrance of the stand, I saw him sitting with his legs crossed, his hands wrapped around his knees, staring intently at the street. Of course, he noticed me as I drove in. "Hey, it's me," I said as I sat down at the table, noticing a box of ice cream in front of me. "I know," he replied with a grin. "Do you still remember that I love ice cream in the winter?" I asked. "I remember everything about you. Whatever you like, I like it too," he laughed. "But we never went out for ice cream together before," I said. "Well, tell me about it. When did I ever invite you to go anywhere?" he teased. I was shy, I felt my face getting hot as I looked down. Suddenly, he turned serious and said, "I used to like you a lot, but I didn't dare to tell you." I burst out laughing, feeling relieved. "I liked you too." "Really?" he exclaimed. "But not anymore," I said, glancing at him to gauge his reaction. "Same here, I don't like you anymore either," he replied. It's normal for kids to have crushes on each other. Looking back, it's funny, isn't it? I said, feeling happy and carefree. When we first started school, I never thought we'd end up in the same class. But it was fun, despite your clinginess. I teased him. Well, it was nice to be in class 13 again. Now that I'm studying far from home, I appreciate those old times even more. Besides studying for the university entrance exams, I don't have much to worry about, I said, feeling nostalgic. My. Wait for me a bit. That was the familiar conversation in the morning when we were getting ready to go to school. We were in the same class for 4 years in junior high school. In high school, we were in different classes, but we never talked to each other. We only went to school together because my mother and his aunt worked at the same company and were close friends. I heard that both of us were feeling lonely and single, so we decided to go together to make ourselves feel better. In the first few days of going to school together, I was very annoyed because he never initiated any conversation. If I didn't ask anything, he wouldn't speak. When we started going to school together, I wanted to hit you so badly, I said. Why didn't you hit me? Young asked, sobering up. Because we were riding bikes. If we were walking, I would have gone and hit you because you were so annoying, I replied. But you got used to it, and now we're addicted to chatting. Young laughed. I'm not addicted to you. Ha! 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 I chuckled with sarcasm. You used to like me, didn't you? Young asked. Realizing that I said the wrong thing, I tried to change the subject. However, he didn't want to let it go and went deeper into the matter. I used to like you too, he said, looking nostalgic. Do you know when I started to like you? I asked. I don't know. He replied. As usual, Young and I were riding our bike side by side when dark clouds suddenly gathered. The bright blue sky was quickly replaced by a dark and gloomy one. The darkness spread rapidly like smoke rising from a charcoal stove. Neither of us had prepared raincoats beforehand. We tried to pedal faster to avoid the rain, but how could we avoid it when we had only covered half of the distance and the weather changed dramatically? I saw large raindrops falling heavily on the road, splashing tiny droplets of water around each drop. The rain soaked through my shirt, making my skin feel cold. Young was next to me, looking awkward and unsure of what to do. Suddenly, he reached out his right hand and grabbed my left hand holding the bike handlebars, speaking quickly. Quickly come inside to avoid the rain. I see a place to hide, he said. At this point, my eyes were blurry and stinging from the rain. Both of us were almost completely soaked. We quickly parked our bikes outside and ran straight into the porch of a one-story house with a flat roof. However, it seemed like the owner of the house had not been living there for a long time because the grass was quite tall, and green moss covered much of the porch floor. We both stood close to the wall, trying to avoid the rain, but it seemed like the porch was not wide enough to protect us from the heavy rain. The rain was pouring down horizontally and vertically, soaking all the pedestrians. I stood there shivering slightly because the cold was seeping into my flesh, and the sound of the pouring rain was getting louder. Young's voice startled me. Are you cold? He asked. Yeah, I replied, my hands slightly shaking as I held them in front of my chest to minimize the cold. He stepped closer to me. At that moment, I thought he was going to hold my hand to keep me warm. But he didn't. He stepped forward, turned his back toward me, and said, Let me stand in front of you. I'm used to standing in the rain at home. It's okay. If you get sick tomorrow, I'll be sad to go to school alone. I stood behind him like a rock, lost in thought. Suddenly, I felt much warmer. The warmth was not from Young's body, but it seemed like a current of electricity was running through my body. My face felt hot, and I knew it was turning red without looking in the mirror. Fortunately, Jung didn't turn around. If he had turned around, I would have had to find a hole in the ground to hide in. I put both my hands on my face, hoping it would reduce the redness. When the rain stopped, we continued to ride our bikes again. He spoke normally, laughing and chatting as usual, leaving me with mixed thoughts. A few days later, I had to adjust my thoughts that I was too sensitive. It was just a very normal thing that a friend does. So you like me since that rainy day, huh? Yeah, back then I wanted to hug you, but I was afraid you might get mad and stop talking to me, so I just stood in front of you to shelter you from the rain. So you didn't like me back then? She asked. Like what? Don't be silly. I lowered my head to sip the melted ice cream, which was almost nothing but water. Actually, I did like it when we took shelter from the rain. But who says it straight like this? As a girl, I should at least step back a level before liking a boy to avoid feeling embarrassed. Do you remember when you had a flat tire? I looked at her to see if she could recall the incident. Jung squinted, seemingly trying to remember where the incident was hidden in her mind. I've had several flat tires, how could I remember? Jung and I went to school together. But we never dared to sit beside each other in class. Every action of ours in class was noticed by the watchful eyes around us. The classroom was spacious, in the countryside where we were preparing for the college entrance exams. There were only 2 places in the district offering preparatory classes, so the class size was up to hundreds of students. We couldn't socialize with everyone in the class, so we just hung out in groups. I usually sat at the second desk next to Lean and Hung. The 2 girls, who lived nearby, often came early to save a seat for me. Although I was grateful to them for never having to worry about fighting for a seat. I had to listen to questions like, is there anything between you and Jung? You go to school together all the time and there's nothing going on? I don't believe it. The other day I saw Jung looking at you in a certain way. When I sat there lost in thought, feeling sad because I had solved this type of homework many times but still forgot, and math was still not improving despite preparing for the college entrance exams. I didn't know if this kind of preparation would yield any results. At times like that, I would receive the question, are you daydreaming about Jung? Then the 2 of them would take turns pretending to be Jung and me, creating their own scenarios and answering each other with random love words that drove me crazy. The more annoyed I was, the more they teased me. In fact, many times their teasing didn't really make me angry. There was something pleasing in my heart, but it was overshadowed by my annoyance. Like every day, school ended at 11 o'clock. I rode my bike to the meeting place and waited. Jung was always late. Today, for some reason, she was taking longer than usual. I was getting anxious and looked inside the classroom. The class had almost emptied out. Only her bike was still parked there. But I couldn't see her anywhere. I walked towards the classroom and saw her carrying her backpack from the end of the classroom. What took you so long to come out? I asked. I went to the restroom. You went to the restroom and then immediately fell asleep in there until now? I responded irritably. Oh my God, I've had a stomachache since morning and you didn't even ask how I was doing before getting angry. She said. Fine, how are you? Are you chasing me away now? I replied sarcastically. She nodded and continued, I've had to make 5 or 6 trips since morning, with a sad expression on her face. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at her misery. Without saying anything, she got on her bike and started pedaling but couldn't move. She got off to check and exclaimed, my tire is flat. Can I ride with you? What? Are you kidding me? I snapped. My bike is broken, what else can I do? She responded. But I don't know how to ride with someone else on the back. I protested. Then you can carry me, she suggested stubbornly. God, I'll turn into a superhero if I have to carry someone who's more than half my weight all the way home. Forget it. Just walk the 3 kilometers back home, I'll go ahead, I said, puffing up my chest and riding away. I was just teasing her, but she didn't seem to find it amusing. Maybe she was still angry about our earlier laughter. After a while, I felt guilty and turned back to check on her. She was still persisting in pushing her bike. Seeing that, I suddenly felt moved. "Come on, get on the bike and I'll give you a ride home," I said. She smiled brightly and quickly brought her bike over to sit behind me. I pedaled slowly, feeling the hunger pangs in my stomach as it grumbled and churned. It was already 11:30 in the afternoon. And at this rate, we wouldn't be able to eat lunch until after 12. Seeing me looking tired, she offered, "Why don't I sit behind you and pedal with you so you won't get too tired?" "No, you pedal." "I'm already exhausted," I protested. She scooted forward to get closer to the bike seat, and gently pushed her feet into the pedal slots alongside mine. Even though I knew what was going to happen, I still jumped when I felt her warmth against my back, and the closeness of our bodies just a few centimeters apart. Startled, I lost my balance and the bike wobbled. In a split second, Young threw herself forward and grabbed onto my waist to steady me. "What's wrong with you?" "You have to be careful," she scolded. "Sorry, there was a pothole," I replied, trying to cover up my mistake. From that moment on, we rode in silence. The air felt heavy, and I didn't know what she was thinking, but I felt something stirring inside me that was inexplicable. It was a feeling that was different from anything I had ever experienced before. Even more so than when we took shelter from the rain. Or was it just me? Throughout the journey, I kept asking myself a series of questions, but every time I did, I pushed them away. No, it was just a feeling between two people of different genders. She was my best friend, after all. "So, did you like me back then?" "Do you like me now?" she asked, half-jokingly. "You're such a monkey." "I forgot to bring a scale, so I don't know if you weighed as much as your feelings," I said, teasingly. Her face suddenly turned serious. "Why didn't you tell me back then?" "What do you mean?" "You're a guy, you should have said it first," I replied, defensively. "I was afraid you would get mad and cut me off completely," she said. "I was afraid of the same thing," I admitted. "Too bad," she sighed. Neither of us said anything, but it seemed like we were feeling the same way. A little regret, a little frustration, and a little anger. The calm atmosphere was suddenly broken by Young. "When I first started school, I missed you so much. Every day, I thought about you. If I had money back then, I would have bought a plane ticket to see you just to stop missing you," she said. "I missed you a lot too, but the new environment, new friends, and new studies kept me busy, and after about 2 months, I rarely thought about you. It's not that I forgot. Though. How could I forget the first hug of my life?" I said, with a hint of sadness. Perhaps our feelings were not strong enough to move forward, and gradually I forgot about the love I had for you. You are the person who understands me the most, and I don't confide in anyone else as much as I do with you. I always see you as my best friend. Right now, I feel like this is more than enough." Seeing Young lost in thought, I couldn't help but tease her. "Did you accidentally take some medicine or something? You seem like a confused old man." "I've always been your friend. Nothing more." She playfully pushed back. "I was just lost in thought, leave me alone. I noticed you were sulking, so I dumped some water on you to wake you up. You have good intentions. But you always think negatively," I laughed. Young raised both hands and shook her head to relieve the tension, while saying, "Let's forget about it, it's getting late." "Okay. Come to my house tomorrow to hang out," I suggested. "We will always be good friends," she suddenly said, making me burst out laughing. "Oh my God, did you drink too much smoothie or something? You just said the cheesiest thing ever. We are just friends, what else could we be?" "Haha, just kidding. You're still the same as before. You always tease me whenever I say something serious," she smiled. "Well, I'm still the same old friend of yours." "Let's go home," I replied. As we rode our bikes back, we reminisced about old memories. Everywhere we looked, there were memories. The scenery was the same, the people were the same. Only the distant memories were somewhat obscured by the dust of time. However, when we met and talked, they came back vividly as if it were yesterday. Memories that may follow us throughout our lives.